With the Switch 2 being out now, more and more people are securing their systems and deciding which games to pre-order. Well, for those lucky enough to have won the pre-order war at least. But when it comes to game preservation and collecting, there's an elephant in the room that's dropped like a bomb during the Switch 2 Direct. Game keycards. Between the rise of digital exclusive sales, games being ported digitally to Steam, games releasing via Game Pass, and now many popular third-party games launching as game keycards instead of true physicals, what does this mean for the next generation of gaming? Has Nintendo killed physical gaming? What will or won't change? Let's take a deeper look at what's actually going on and clear up some misunderstandings. First, it's important to look at the current climate of gaming releases and acknowledge an uncomfortable truth, no matter how much we'd rather not think about it. Almost all games, even true physical releases, no longer release with the entire game on the card. Between day one update patches, countless DLC patches, and features requiring online access, live service, and gacha games, the amount of games that can truly be played in their entirety decades from now when the servers are down is a much smaller percentage than we realize. And for those of us who love to reminisce by playing older games from our childhood, it's kinda scary. But don't worry, there are still many games that release in a complete state, and you can grab many of them over at PlayAsia. When searching for Switch 2 games, just make sure it has this little green icon stating Game Card, and not an orange one saying Game Key Card. If you're still concerned, you can always look online after release and check with other players to confirm there's no day one patches, to know for sure if the game is truly plug and play. And if you order from PlayAsia using my link, it helps support future videos. But back to talking about games requiring updates. Unlike the past, when physical games included the full game right from launch. This is a double-edged sword, because as much as it does suck knowing that physical copies don't contain everything, it also means a lot of our games are getting more content and updates long after launch, which does mean we can enjoy them much longer and adds to the replay value. But at the same time, the more that existing games fight to add more and more content to keep our attention, the longer our backlog gets and the fewer games we actually complete. This is especially true with gacha games, which increasingly fight to keep us locked in for life. But that's a discussion for another day. For now, let's talk about game keycards and clarify what that means. The game keycard is a new format of physical game. Game keycards effectively act as a key that unlocks the license to play the game on your system, allowing you to download it from servers and play on your device. This isn't entirely something new, as Switch games have been released in the past without the full game on the card, but at least this time there's more transparency. Because the game is linked to the cartridge and not a one-time code, it is one step up from collecting a code in a box, because the physical cartridge can still be lent to family or friends, or sold secondhand once you complete the game, as long as the servers are still open. So it's true that it is a better investment than buying a game digitally, but it is still a step behind true physicals, as one day it'll be nothing more than a piece of plastic once the servers go down. Furthermore, if you're someone with a poor internet connection who buys the game while traveling, it may be challenging to download the game via the keycard to play right away, and you'll have to wait until you have a more stable internet connection. So if Nintendo is still releasing its first-party games fully on card, why do the keycards exist? And why are other publishers using them instead of releasing their cards as full physicals like fans demand? The majority of game keycards are third-party games, due to the increased cost of manufacturing making it much more difficult for companies to justify the price of a full game on cartridge. This is also why you see some releases like Raidou Remastered releasing a physical edition for the original Switch while releasing a game keycard for the Switch 2 edition. So at least you have a bit of an option, since the Switch 2 can still play Switch games, even if the quality's a bit less. The price to manufacture Switch 1 cartridges has not changed. However, for the Switch 2 there are two size cartridges available, the 64GB card and a much smaller card. The smaller card is affordable, but the reality is most modern games can't fit on the card. Hence the card only holding a key to unlock the rest of the download. The 64GB game cards cost much more to produce, which adds a significant cost for developers to consider, especially for indie and third-party games, which sell at lower prices in the first place, giving them much lower profit margins if they go the physical route, or forcing them to raise their prices to offset the cost onto consumers. When many game companies are already going under or having massive layoffs due to the current economic state of the industry, it makes little sense for them to justify this extra cost when profit margins are already critical, as gamers cannot and aren't willing to pay more. but devs are already often landing in the red. So it isn't as simple as Nintendo blatantly harming the physical game industry, but for many collectors who care about game preservation, this largely means the eventual death of a large portion of an entire generation of games. Sure, certain ways will always exist, but it's true that legitimate and actual sales are what support the devs that make the games we love. No, unfortunately, no amount of fan art or tweets will pay their bills, and being able to preserve legitimate copies of games we care about is something important to collectors, especially when other methods of preservation are, illegal. But this lack of legal ways to preserve games will inevitably lead to a rise in such methods in the future unless alternative and legitimate options are provided. Not only that, but if you're like me and just love browsing retro game stores and enjoy the treasure hunt looking for old gems, yeah, that'll become a thing of the past. Are digital games and game keycards bad? Not entirely. There are pros to buying digital. For starters, the profit margin is higher for developers, as there's no need to produce the materials required for physical copies. Digital copies are also better for the environment because there's less plastic being sold and traded, as well as less clutter to fill up your home if your shelves are already bursting at the seams. If you travel a lot, it's also much more convenient since you don't have to carry a bunch of cartridges with you. Perhaps the most enticing reason to buy digital is digital sales, which often have games sitting at 50% off or even less. You can also get the game immediately instead of waiting for shipping or back orders. Furthermore, most games these days are also ported to Steam, which means you can save money and avoid even buying a console in the first place, which is a major expense. However, it's important to remember that digital copies are never truly owned. Remember when an Ubisoft exec said we should get comfortable not owning our games? Yeah, gamers didn't like that too much. Reality hasn't changed when it comes to digital gaming. Steam is the best example of this, as they've publicly admitted that you're not buying your games, but rather buying a license to play those games. Lose your Steam account, you lose all your games forever, because you don't own them. You just own a license connected to that account. Lose both your Switch and access to your Nintendo account. Say goodbye to your game library. Though admittedly, if you're as clumsy as me, it's just as easy to lose a physical cartridge. The worst offender when it comes to game preservation is Game Pass, as once your subscription expires or a game is removed from the service, you completely lose access. Though it's great on a financial scale for people who can't afford to buy full-price games, since they gain access to a huge variety of games at a steep discount, but it comes with the cost of ownership and game preservation. I actually think the perfect compromise between the two would be to release physical copies of games that also come with a one-time digital code. That way, you can own a physical copy of the game for game preservation, while you also can link the digital copy to your system so you can play without the need to insert the cartridge every time. This is something that's already done with various Blu-ray distributors like G-Kids, so that people who buy physical copies for preservation but only own devices like iPads or laptops without a disk drive can still easily watch their movies. So why not do the same with games? Of course, it's possible that people may give away or sell the digital code, so perhaps there'd need to be some kind of safeguard in place to prevent misuse. But that's an idea I'd love to see explored. How do you feel about game keycards? Feel it's an improvement from codes in a box, or a misleading scam to people hoping to collect physical? Don't really mind as long as it still has secondhand value? Let me know in the comments how you feel about this new physical format.